Okay. All right. I think it should be live. Just gonna go through some more DE. I'm actually joined a game now as DE Hinnom. So I'm gonna go through some more thoughts on how to try. I'm gonna think about what less I want to do, and then look a little bit more seriously at not only the Hinnom spells, but sort of everybody's spells, at least all the generic spells, and try to figure out what threat vectors, we're gonna get added with the new spells to Hinnom, and what we need to worry about. I'm not going to go over the whole nation again. The biggest changes I think they're going to impact our build are the Kohen is now out of the box a fully functional blood searcher or blood hunter, whereas before it was basically never a good blood hunter. And it has a higher level magic skill as well, which is pretty big. And then all of the Rephites had their pop kill and turmoil and unrest generation reduced. And then the Rephite warrior is now Holy Point 2. So compared to sort of vanilla Dominion 6, the Holy Point 2 is just brutal, and I think is going to really just push out basically any of like the awake builds you might consider for the Rephite warrior, like with big incarnates. I think that's just probably not going to be viable anymore. It's going to be very expensive to get them, especially if you recruit any of your Rephite commanders. They also are going to take 2 holy points. And certainly as the game progresses a little bit, you want to be recruiting one of these, just about every turn, as they are obviously, they are limited in how many you can have. And so I think the Rephite warrior plan is basically out. Maybe you can still do it. You take Dom 10. You try and avoid making some of these Rephite commanders for the most part. You get a lot of temples built. The problem with getting a lot of temples built, of course, is that a lot of temples built probably means you have a lot of money. And taking an awake build doesn't tend to come with having a lot of money and then spending, 100 gold per Rephite warrior. Plus, obviously, expensive mages and such. So I think we're going to essentially say that any kind of awake or even dormant Rephite build is probably dead. Especially, now this is something we could fiddle with. I don't like awake Rephite warrior expansion, just because you don't have anybody great to lead them, and so you end up wanting to do like 2 leaders, just because the priest tends to be very vulnerable. And so and you expand pretty well with your other stuff, so I just don't really like it anyway. So for me, I'm going to go ahead and say no on any kind of big Rephite warrior problem. Now, theoretically, most things are cheaper, and you can see a lot of these guys have more paths. For Dominions Enhanced, it is 20 points on the Dom 1 guys for a new path. Still 40 on our Golden Idol. Some things are cheaper, right? It's only 40 on the Nephilim. 40 on the Grigori. I said 40 on everything. Does anybody have paths that cost more than 40 monsters, probably? Okay, monsters still cost more than 40. I guess some of them. Wow, some of them don't still. Okay, interesting. So 40 is about the top. There's 60. Okay, 60 is the top. 40 is present on a lot of them. But... okay, so taking into account that we're not going to be going for an awake Rephite or a dormant Rephite build, what does that leave us with? Well, it leaves us with something like Scales. You can take a ton of Scales. Obviously, we still have great Scales troops, and the Dawn Guard, who is an exceptional Scales troop. Got that magic weapon, decent stat line, a little expensive, but pretty strong. The Chariot did get a buff. The protection and I think it's just the protection, might be protection and defense on the cart is up. So these are going to do a little bit better. Probably still not something you'd see a ton of. Maybe they might be able to do more in expansion, and you might be able to throw, Gift of Flight on them and launch them at the backline. As something you can consider doing. But Scales Hinnom is still definitely a great nation. You have a lot of good mages. A lot of great stuff to do. I think the other option is Sayir focused Hinnom. And when I, talk about these different pieces, right? You can do, if you take a Sayir focus plus, you can still make Rough Fight Warriors, and you can still take good scales. So it's kind of a sliding, it changes between each piece. It's not like taking one thing focuses you to, or forces you not to be able to do any of the others. So I think that for me though, right, the ability to add this blood searcher, or to just have this blood searcher, is going to make it much easier to get a lot of Sayir online. So I think that's going to be my focus. And then, we'll see if we want to make any concessions to our Rough Fight Warriors or to like our milk carts and other casters. You do have access to it. It costs a bajillion gold, right? But the Enkidu Slave is a very low upkeep unit that can patrol for one point, which is certainly much more efficient than like 1.1 for 32, right? And these guys cost basically no resources or recruitment points. So you can just head right down blood. You don't have to try and get to like, enchantment or conjuration to get patrol chaff for the really early, time period. Eventually, right, you don't want to be using these guys forever for that. Certainly, you'd rather use either real troops that don't have anything else to do, maybe we haven't gone to war yet, or eventually upkeep free units. But if you're trying to churn out Sayir for a first war, then you can rely on these Enkidu slaves as an option. So, assuming that we want to, you do have access to this Dawn Warrior, who's pretty cool, and any bless you take, he'll do a good job with if you take one. Notably, only one sacred point instead of 2. Not sure if that's a bug or what. They are recruitment limited, so you still can't just get as many of them as you want, but that guy's cool. Construction bonus as well. Although the cost is pretty high, and it's a 10% bonus. So I think a lot of the times a 10% bonus may not trigger at all. That's something I'd have to check. If it's going to round down. And it's the spell is 25 gems. And then you have to put in another... Where's the spell? Oh, yeah. 25 gems plus another gem per turn you want it to be up. So let's say 25 turns, right? That's 50 gems. That means you need to spend 500 gems to get your 10% back. And like maybe you'll do that, but that's a lot. So not worth casting it just for that. But more importantly are our Sayir. So looking at the unit real quick, again, let's see what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, and then what we want to try and buff up. So 28 hit points is pretty good. It is size 4, so it could take a larger, although we'll talk about why I don't think we need to put that on our bless in a little bit. Protection is lousy, only 7 nat protection and no armor to buff. So defenses on a protection level are definitely weak. 15 MR is very good, 30 morale is very good. 16 strength is good. So we have a pretty good, attack and damage line, especially because we have Berserker 4. So that's going to be 17 on these, 16 here, and 20 here. It's going to lower our defense. It is going to get our protection up to 11. But that's still pretty lousy. So protection is a big problem for us. Demon Tag, of course, has some weaknesses as well. And their defense isn't great. And once you get the Berserker on, it's going to be terrible. They're going to get hit the vast majority of the time. Map move is only okay. Pretty low encumbrance. So the main thing, right, is you get 2 of these in a square, and they're going to put out 6 attacks. And very early on, you can get these pretty heavily buffed, right? They'll take themselves right to 1720, and then you can do Bloodlust to make it 1724. And then if you can enlarge them, it'll be 1727 with all those pieces put in place. And 27 is enough to get through just about anything. Maybe some really high-level stuff with a lot of regen and a lot of protection could beat you, but you have other anti-SC tools, so you hopefully shouldn't fall into that hole. But yeah, so our defenses are mostly the problem. So what do we want? I'm just going to put 1 point in everything so we can look at all of our options here. and just take this is about the cheapest chassis you can get. Let's take a quick look. So if we're doing something like that, right, we could consider dumping turmoil. We don't need it necessarily if we're planning on mostly recruiting, mostly summoning our armies, right, with the Sayer, our long dead reanimation, stuff like that. You don't need to go have something crazy. We do need production probably. These guys actually are even. Some of our other troops though are going to be. Actually, I take it back. They're mostly even except the swordsman. And this is our best troop, so maybe there's. This is what's going to let us make any ref fights though. For temperature, you probably want to take at least 1 point off. It's hard to go up here because in the summer you'll get up to 4 and then you'll start murdering your population, so that's pretty bad. Growth is great on Blood Nations. We have really good heroes. This particular chassis does kind of mess with our luck. We can't take more than 1. Now, with that said, there is a national spell for Hinnom in this, which gets the +3 luck scales. Before I actually start the game, I do want to take a look at exactly how long this lasts and try to think about what it's good for. Right, fixing up your cap unrest if you've been recruiting milk carts, if you have them summoning things, if you've got ref fights, is nice. The 10% tax boost is going to be okay. It's definitely not worth. You're not getting paid. Certainly early game, maybe you can eventually build a big enough capital, but generally you're not going to get the rate that you're looking for if you've done like alchemy or even like trading. So you're going to take a little bit. There's going to be, it's not perfect there. The +3 luck scales in your capital is what matters for the heroes. And those will hang around for a little bit before they get knocked back down. You probably want to be really careful though, if you are going to consider this, in that you don't want to necessarily get yourself up to luck 4 or 5, as there is a negative tax implication from doing that. And doing it a ton obviously costs a lot of pearls. But you could consider, you could potentially leave luck at 0 and then plan to just go up to 3 with that. And then you'll fluctuate between 0 and 3 depending on your dominion. Magic, we have good MR. We definitely don't want to get hit by MR issues. The nation's researchers are bad. They just are. Obviously, your Horite Shaman has enough to researcher 6. He's not researching anything. The Ami is your main researcher. He has no bonus to it, and he's paying for a larger chassis, the size 4 chassis. So he's 170 gold for 9 research. It's pretty lousy, all told. Not sacred. 9 research here costs even more gold. Not sacred. The Kohen is 11, but costs 360 gold up front. He's 144 a year, versus 136. So they're very comparable in terms of upkeep. He researches a little better, but with the unrest and the pop build, he actually is going to be less efficient. And then your bales, your milk carts, you really don't want to be researching generally. So I guess the point there is your researching is not good, and the question is, how are you going to fix that? And for me, I think the answer is probably that you need to invest in research items. And when you invest in research items, it makes the base chassis not as important, because a larger and larger percentage is going to come from the item. Unfortunately, you still don't have, you don't even have a good chassis for it, in the sense that you don't have anybody who's really low upkeep, like a really low upkeep Sacred Mage, to try and stack them on. But I think that you could definitely end up stacking multiple research boosting items on a single mage. And so that is going to lessen the impact of something like Drain Scales. So you could consider going like Drain 2. And I think this is like an acceptable line. Obviously, if you want more money, you could do this. That costs a ton of points. This would be a lot more of your Scales troops, which obviously could be good. There's some question of how many you really need. And you could go for more luck if you wanted to. With the, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head of how many, rec points you need to make something work. The DE for Hinnom does have this population growth of 0.6 added onto your capital. This is to offset the wasteland, so you no longer are paying that wasteland tax. So your population with growth can still have a chance of growing, although again, you will be eating them every time you make a Mel cart, every time you make a bale or a Repite Warrior. So still pressure on the capital. Okay, so this is probably an acceptable scale range. So let's see, what can we, what do we sort of want from a bless? So our problem, right, for this a year is that they are very killy. They have pretty low defenses. 11 protection is just not anything to write home about. And then the answer is, what can we do to help them in the bless to survive better? And they're also only going to have 7 defense, so defense stacking I don't think is a realistic option. Even if you did it, you'd only get to like 17, or not even 17. I mean, you could, you put 5 of these up to 12, and then you take like swiftness or something. Like, I don't know, maybe you could get a bunch of points, but it doesn't sound like a great idea. And so what does that leave us with? I think the answer is that it's going to leave us with not a lot. I think our what it's going to leave us with is we just have to kill things even faster. This is versus like normal weapon attacks and other troops. We'll cover spells in a moment. The other thing I want to check out, obviously, is all the blesses that used to be incarnate that aren't. So Death Explosion. We are slightly larger, so it's a relatively good-sized AoE. We'd want to take a lot of fire resistance if you're going to take Death Explosion. I mean, 10 AP damage is still not a ton. There's a lot of elites are not going to care. Some will, right? Some like elves maybe. But a lot are not going to care too much. But that's a thing. Weightlessness got made non-incarnate. This is a good one, but not for us. This is not floating, or this is floating. No, they gain the floating trait. Unfortunately, in DE, or maybe, unfortunately for this particular strategy, Earthquake is now a once around spell, so you can't do like shenanigans with weightlessness. I don't think the incarnates are for us. Slowing weapons. It's kind of interesting. 6 points, so it's pretty costly. But a 50% slow is substantial, as well as losing a 2 attack and 2 defense, and we have a lot of chances to apply it. That's kind of interesting, right? We are defending ourselves by taking fewer swings from the opponents. Part of the problem here might be that you kill things so fast that new units step up to take their place and stab you, and they're not slow. So like, I don't think this works particularly well with what we're doing. We're not dealing a lot of chip damage that slows. We're dealing some pretty chonky damage that I would expect to get through. Maybe later in the game this would be better, when people have tons of buffs and our 27 damage is no longer just wrecking stuff. Frostness weapons is really far away from us from the cold scale. That would be difficult. We don't have any particularly good plans to beat the cold either, so we'd have to take. It would cost a lot to do this. And I just don't think clouds are as good in this game as they were. Larger is good, but actually, I mean, rather than keep not talking about it, I think one of the things that you definitely want to plan to be doing as soon as you could get it is this elemental form spell. New to DE, this is going to give fire, cold, shock res 5, although note that you lose 5 again. So it's actually giving you this cold penalty is going to stick around, but it's going to be harder to buff away this cold problem, right? Because I think this is not going to stack with a standard 5 buff. So note that. It's going to give blunt, pierce, and slash resistance. It's going to give you in larger, right? The size, the HP, the strength. Nat plus 10. And then the defense -1 and susceptibility to cold. So basically it is going to do temper flesh, enlarge, stone skin, and then whatever spell, whatever spell grants 5 of each resist. I can't remember off the top of my head. It's one of the nature ones. And this is AoE 25, and in return, as a downside, it breaks your armor. Of course, the Seer do not have any armor. So, and then they're kind of in a unique, or a relatively unique spot where they both don't have any armor and have pretty terrible nat prot. So like, you might have units that have much better, a lot of other units that may not have armor have a lot more nat prot, and so they're only going to be getting, the +3 or whatever. Whereas for the Seir, they're going to get +8 off of this. And Berserker stacks up afterwards. So with this and Berserk, they go to 19 protection, which is much more survivable. And so this also is why, this one is why I don't think we necessarily want to take larger, and why something like, even though I'm mostly not looking at Incarnates anyway, but something like Fortitude I think is not necessary. Hard Skin also does not work for Seir, with any kind of armor buff. So Hard Skin, not great either. Resilience of the Earth is worth considering. Even Dormant. So it basically costs you 5 points, or Incarnate. Costs you 5 points to get 8 points worth of stuff. So you basically have to decide, is getting 3 points back worth not having this online until the, turn 30 something? I think it's probably not. I think that there's a pretty good chance that you want fire and shock resistance before you get to the 30s. But something to consider. Solar weapons, depending on your game, maybe this makes sense. If you've got a small number of enemies and you know that you've got a good chance of being up against some Death Nations, maybe like a Yomi or something. In a bigger game, it's hard to be too worried about that. Spirit Sight, it's a no. You already have Dark Vision, so you'll be paying a lot for the Glamour effect bit. You just take True Sight. Farcaster and Finesse would be nice for your casters, but not something that you really need. Also, DE does not have any kind of spellcasting mod on, so we can probably expect the casters to do a bad job as soon as they get off script, which is going to hurt the value of a caster bless like that. Undying is always great, and it pairs well with, Blood, Enchanted Blood. That's still true for our Seir, and giving them more HP is always nice. They do start with a decent amount, so unlike a human where you take 5 Undying and now you've doubled their hit points, taking 5 Undying is going to increase your hit points by like 30%, right, or 28%, something like that. So not as big, even less when you consider if you enlarge. This doesn't do anything. Mending Bones not gonna work. They're not undead. Withering Weapons probably not necessary. You're dealing a lot of damage. Reanimators is down here now. While you do have a good chance to kill things, I think that Reanimators is still probably not very good. The rest of these are Incarnate, so not great for what we're thinking about. And even something like Stygian Flesh, right, which helps with theoretically helps with our defense problem, doesn't help that much. And as soon as you cast any earth buff, right, it does nothing. HP is here again. Poison resistance is great. Poison weapons is an option. Obviously, this death scale kind of sucks. You're going to take you need to have kind of a different plan. Again, you're also, I think, not very likely to chip people. You're much more likely to kill them, so it doesn't really do much. Stacking more Berserker on is reasonable. Berserker +2 is going to give you, right, 2 more attack, 2 more strength, 2 more protection. So that's all, that is pretty reasonable. I think it also is great on the Rephite Warriors. It's going to help them not have Fear of the Flood problems. So you're paying 5 points, and you're kind of getting, right, like, what, 1, 2, so 4 points worth of strength, and another, 4 points worth of attack, and then you get 2 more protection, which it doesn't have obviously a specific point value. But so that's you'd probably say that's like a 9 or a 10 point thing. Obviously the problem is your casters getting hit and then deciding that they're not going to cast anymore and they're going to run into combat, which is not great. It tends to be kind of a mixed bag on something like a Melkart SC, in that you can save the slot. You're never going to have to bother with the Flesh Eater, but you might get, your script is more likely to get interrupted. You can't not give a Flesh Eater to not have your script get interrupted by going Berserk. So kind of dicey there. I could see a world where it works. A lot of your casters are also not sacred, or they're the Amis, they're the Akkas, and you don't. Now the Kohen are better, so maybe you end up putting more Kohen in combat. Normally though, you don't really bother with that, except to put, or at least I hadn't in regular Dominion 6, except to mostly use them as communion or Sabbath slaves. And you can be Berserk and still do that just fine. I don't know if there's any real, there's probably some risk of somebody having like turn 1 flyers or some kind of a very quick spell cast that could hit you and trigger the Berserk before they go into a Sabbath or a communion. So that is kind of risky. But I think that there's something to Berserker that you could consider. Regen is nice. Obviously, Incarnate only is pretty rough. Heroism, I don't think you need so much. The Seir make a lot of it. Like, you make a lot of attacks. Some of them are going to die anyway. I don't know. I don't think Heroism is it. It is nice stats, though. Blur, again, I don't think we can fix defense, so we shouldn't bother. Or I don't think we should bother. The rest of these are Incarnate. I will say that Awe and Dread are in some ways kind of interesting, because you have a dread option. It says Fear here, but it's lying. It's actually Dread. Or it's going to be changed. This Celestial Abomination spell gives an AoE 10 and is going to grant Dread 5. And so it does stack with a Bless. So you could have Dread 10 units, which is quite a lot of Dread. I believe, though, that in general it is easier in this game, in the DE version, to pick up True Sight than it is in regular Dominion 6. Let's see, there's Small Gift of True Sight. I think that there's a bigger one. Fae, okay, that's still very small. That's 3+ at level 5. Fae-Eyed Warriors is 20+ at level 6. And are we gonna get the army version? We do not get an army version, so that's something. But people basically, they can buff for it, and once they buff for it, it no longer does anything, which is unfortunate. It also is, of course, Incarnate, so probably not something we're super excited to be doing with the way we've built this out. And then in Blood, there's Strength, there's Enchanted Blood, Blood Surge are all reasonable options. So I think we have a couple of choices, and I think the question is going to be, how many resists do we want? How many stats do we want? And I think Berserker is the sort of the other question that's sort of worth considering. And I don't remember if there's anything else that stacks with any berserking spells in DE that are different, and I suppose trying to find them this way is not very effective. Where is, let's see, I'm trying to recall where the Berserk stuff is normally. There's Berserk for animals, but it's just Berserk 0, so it doesn't really do anything for us. Growing Fury, that's the one. Yeah. So that won't really do anything. Doesn't buff it. Animals. Up. It's funny. It just punishes astral corruption. Okay. So let's see. We probably don't want one in everything. I think we're most unlikely to use Glamour, although a bit unfortunate in that that is one of the paths we don't really have, so we'd kind of like our god to have it. I think we definitely want Blood. I think Undying is not needed, and that's the only thing we would need out of Death. Although Death, again, is one of our lower paths, so we kind of like our god to have some more Death. Astral is always nice to have. I don't think we're using any of the paths from it, though. I really like having Astral, of course, on the Astral Earth cross path on the god, because you don't get it anywhere else, and there's a pretty potent Astral booster there, obviously, and it makes Communion gear, although you do have Sabbats, and you have other mages that can make Sabbath gear, so maybe we can go without. Earth gives us access to Reinvig Strength. Like I said, I don't think we need larger. So, potential there. If we want our resists, there obviously we need Air, Fire, Water. For all of our resistances. So if we wanted to take us up to 4 in each, just so you have 5 in Earth. Say we don't want that. We do want this. Alright, what else do we get? So you could do, still have a lot of points. You start as what, Earth Blood? Oh, that would be, could do something like this, right? There's a lot of points. This is going to help us get into some glamour stuff. No Astral is definitely unfortunate. But we don't need the path for our Bless. The other one obviously would be to get rid of this and do something like this. Could be better. Crystal Coin. I don't know. There are a lot of new spells, so it's hard, and I don't know what all the new options are for breaking into things, because DE does add more break-ins. So I don't know what the easiest way for us to break into stuff is. We do have access to the Mother of Demons to break us into high glamour. And then once she does that, that opens up as many glamour mages as we have blood for with... Well, I think this guy has glamour, but that's a whole separate thing. Wherever where's the succubus? That's the one. Right, so we could do that to get into glamour, so maybe we don't need it. Maybe we're better off with Astral. And this gives us 24 bless points. So now the question is, how many stats do we want? How many resists do we want? With the AI spellcasting not being on, I think that we have a lower risk from water than we normally would, because there is no water battlefield wide that deals damage like there is Wrathful Skies or the Firestorm. There's acid, but that doesn't, you can't resist that anyway from the blessed screen, so that's not really worth being too worried about. There is a risk of fatigue plays from water if you don't have any defenses. That is somewhat mitigated for Hinnom. You have access to relief, and you have a new spell, this Earth 1 spell, which just removes fatigue from everybody who maybe aren't flying. I don't remember if that's flavor or not. It'd be worth checking, but that minus 15 fatigue is big. You can at least make sure that you're getting out of round 5 and with 0 fatigue on all your guys. That's going to help against those kinds of fatigue plays. So let's see. We probably want fire resist, shock resist. I think we do want 1 cold resist, especially if we're planning on kind of hurting our cold resist a bit with that elemental form spell. This is 10 of each with elemental form, which is usually good enough. We could consider going up 1 more fire resist. This would give us 15. This is going to make us pretty much immune to our own evocations and our own firestorm. You know, right, 6 AP, we're in pretty good shape versus that anyway, with just 5 and then 5 from, you know, 5 from a buff, but it would put us in a pretty good place. Wrathful is more dangerous. The problem with Wrathful for us in terms of like leaning into it is that it's difficult for us to cast. We obviously, to make it do anything big, we need to have Evo 6, Alt 5, and we either need Communion Gear, which is at Construction 5, or Sabbath Master Gear at Construction 7. Because otherwise you just can't get enough air to actually cast it. Yeah, not without some. I mean, you could technically, if you had 2 of those shield, like if you had that meteoric shield, right, that brings you to 3. That's in range to cast Storm. And then with Storm up, you could put up Storm Power, and then you're at 4, and then you could Wrathful, but that is a lot of gems and a pretty tough road. Tough road to go down, but technically doable. But more likely you probably just have to get a Sabbath item to make that work. But being immune to other people's Wrathful Skies plays is also pretty nice. That 15 AN damage does hurt a lot. But so that's, you know, it's sort of whatever. Then the question is, what other like stats do we want? Do we want any stats? Do we want an MR? MR is pretty nice. I think we probably want Enchanted Blood. That little bit of Regent goes a long way, and you do get that point of MR. So I like that. They're gonna have what? Let's see. They start with 15. I think we looked 15, and then that's 16, and then if you fight in the drain, that's 17. And then you do have access to obviously casting anti-magic, puts you up to 21. It's a pretty good place to be. I don't think that you're very likely to need more attack. There is probably some argument for getting more strength, in which case the question is, where do we want the strength to come from? So Righteous Wrath is an option. The morale is kind of wasted, though. You have the Sayir are morale 30. It is good on the Rephites. It is useless for a super combatant. So that's a maybe. Again, we already talked about buffing larger is pretty easy, so I don't think we need it. There is Reinvig, but again, we have a few more. We have more Reinvig options than your average bear. +1 strength. There is, again, we talked about Berserker. That is a lot of stats. I have never played with Berserker before on Hinnom or any other nation. So I do have, it is a lot of points, but I definitely have some misgivings about how it might impact our mages who are supposed to be, you know, holding up important battlefield spells. So I just am not, I'm not quite, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm quite sold. But it is pretty strong. And then there's also Blood Surge, which is, again, worth quite a lot of points, as long as you're killing something. Now, I think you are very likely to kill something. So this +3, and then the +3 attack and the +3 strength helps them keep killing something. So, like, if you wanted, again, to do, like, discount stats, you could do that. I think you skip Righteous. You could go Berserker. That's 3 points left. Probably take a PR. And then 1 bless point. I don't think we have anything good to do with 1 bless point. So can we get a scale back? Yeah, we can get a whole scale back by taking it down 1. I don't know if is that the right one to take it down? It might be the only option. Oh, no. Yeah. So we could take it down. Okay, so it'd have to be 1. Yeah, something in here. Is there an Earth 6 spell that we're particularly looking to cast? Earth 6. No, not there. Not here. I mean, I don't think we're technically we could lost land something. That's probably not in our benefit. 5, 5, 5, 5 all over. Earthblood Deepwell is Earth 6, although with you could make the Earth item, the Earthstone, the Bloodstone, to do that. Yeah, I think it's probably just take a point Earth down, and we can give ourselves that luck point maybe. So we're gonna be. I mean, there's a lot of cheap stats here. Our guys are gonna be monsters of killing stuff, extremely killy. Good resistances against everything, and particularly our own plan to do Firestorm as a good option. And we just have to worry about whether or not Berserker is something that we want to have to try and manage through. It is very easy to take random ass chip damage. I don't know. I don't think Berserker is for me. Let's put this back. It gives us 6 more points. I think it's still not Righteous Wrath. Although they are gonna die a decent amount. Unfortunately, just with those lower lower defenses. Could get more SR, more CR. Where did what? Oh, it must be Proclaimer. I was like, where did Slug Weapons go? Goodness, water breathing costs 2. I will say water breathing items are much more available, so this is not as important. Hinnom has access now to a lot of water breathing items. I don't think it's that. Gosh, but what is it? Maybe it is Righteous Wrath, and then another resist of some kind, another SR. So we're extremely resistant step. We have a lot of cheap stats, assuming we kill something or something dies, and we've got pretty good stats to begin with. And we have a little bit of regen and MR. And some more MR for being in Drain. Now let's take a look at spells. Let's see. Let's aim for combat spells in particular and see what might be up against in the first, I don't know, 6 levels that I'm not really used to. There is no, to my knowledge, change log. So some spells will have changed and I just won't know about it. So that just is going to be what it's going to be for now. Nature power is plants only. We don't have to worry about that. There are a bunch of new spells at level 4 here. Smoke Warriors, Mist Warriors, Mud Warriors, and Magma Warriors are all new summon spells. We have access to none of them. And there are 4 effects. I know these Mist Warriors are ranged. So it says they can bypass any armor. They are actually AP, not AN. But so that's something to worry about. These are, I don't really know the units well enough. They're probably strong though, is my guess. They're a DE spell, they're a cross path, they cost a gem. I'm gonna imagine that's a problem for us. Fuel the Fire is also new. This is a reinvigoration for a fire gem. Not super important for us. Most of our stuff that's going to be reinvigorating can use the Blood Slave for it, but it's a neat spell in general. Maggots is good against undead. Not really a problem for us, as it just hits one person. It's like good at killing like thugs, like undead thugs, although the range is kind of short. Power of Water is bad for us, I think. Water bonus +1. Fire spells have fatigue cost doubled, and it creates rain, which we don't like. It's kind of neat, though. It's tough to cast. Okay, that's it for Conjuration. What we have to worry about. There's more stuff here. We get this Heat Aura and more fire resistance. Though again, I doubt that stacks with just casting fire res. And this spell seems like it scales really badly, right? AoE 2 +1 is pretty weak. I don't think that one's great. I mean, fire, you know, adding a heat, and it's a heat aura. It's not like fire shield or anything, so I think it's kind of whatever. Mist can be useful. We can cast it if we want to. If other people are casting spells, or using ranged weapons. Obviously, normal Erosion of Time is new. MR negates, break armor. I think it's like decaying. Fish fins, floating underwater. Okay. This is just flight. AoE 3+. This is useful early. Thanks, cookies. This is useful early. You know, sending people out to enemy's backline is great. And it's in Alteration, whereas normal flight is in enchantment. So kind of lets you steal a little bit from over there. Mudwater is like a slow. Yeah, it looks like a slow. And then you get extra effect in the swamp where you get Earth Crypt. Well, we can't cast it. Elemental Fortitude, that's the one I was thinking of earlier. Amber Skin, AoE 1, Naprot, okay. And it gives blunt resistance and fire resistance. It's nice. Oop. Doesn't do anything for us, though. And not really a problem. Carnivorous plants makes plants. Okay. Something we could look at how good that is. We do have the ability to cast it. 5+1 could be strong. You know, doing that in Swarm make a lot of extra chaff to help out our elites. Shimmering Cloak. Small AoE mirror image. It's not bad. Body of Flames. Okay, caster only, and it's Fire Shield. Oh, and Ethereal. Ethereal, Radiating Heat, and Fire Shield. It's good for our milk carts. Something to consider. It's new. Storm and Arrow Ward, always helpful. Coral Warriors, underwater only. Naprot 10, like a stone skin. Torpor is a slow. Definitely don't want to get slowed, but that's why we got MR. Ghost Form, Fear, Ethereal, Cold Res, Cold Aura. It's cool. Can't cast it. Blood Poisoning, Cat of Warriors. Giant Insects is another summon spell. Elemental Form is a big one, right? That's something that we're very much keeping in mind. We can either put 2 boosters on a what's his face? A shaman, or we can put him into a Sabbath. So both good options for casting that one. It's a big one. Anything else new here? Maybe 15 plus for a stone skin. Curse of Limos. Strength damage and starvation. Ah, we're gonna be starving anyway, no problems. Nothing to worry about there. Blinding flash. Okay, blinds a small area. Okay. I'm sort of capping out at 6 here for new stuff just because I think going through everything would be too much. In terms of what's gonna hurt us, lower levels, lightning strikes twice is new. Armor negating 14 and gives us bad luck. We do have SR for that. False fire is a thing. What else? Anything else new here? Right, Shadow Bolt. Flaming Meteor is new. This one's bad for us. It is not a super common cross path, but it's another way to drop rocks on our guys that don't care about how much HP we have, really. We're not gonna have over 50 on the Seir, pretty much any chance. The rough fights could survive though. Or a Feeble Mind. Ooh. So 5+ armor piercing, and it can stun and Feeble Mind. That's neat. Polar Sea is slow and is underwater. And Evocation 5. Hail of Fire is new. This is a bunch of fireballs. You shoot at 3 fireballs, and it scales really well. So if you get up to fire, now it's already at 4. So like scaling well is sort of difficult to do. But if you get to fire 6, right, you get a whole extra fireball. The damage goes up by 2 per extra level, so it'd be 24. You get 4 24 damage fireballs. The heat shock goes up by 2, so you'd get 4 24 damage fireballs that each have an AoE 6 heat shock that deals, 14 fatigue damage. So if you get really high fire, that's kind of interesting. Deepwater Brine sounds like it's underwater. Yep. We're going to worry about the underwater stuff when we get there. Gifts is bad. Falling rocks we got to be careful of in caves. Deals a bunch of damage. Earthquake got changed, right? Only once per combat round. Which is probably... It just helps people not get cheesed, probably, by Earthquake. Shadow Blast, Illusory Army. That looks like, yep, underwater. Firestones chucks out a bunch of fiery stones that make a big fire cloud. We cannot cast it. Wrathful Magma. Okay. Construction has Soldiers of Steel, which is still great for us. Flaming Arrows we can consider. We do have very strong bowmen if we want them. And we like construction. We want those boosters. We want the research boosts. We want the gear for milk carts. We love construction. Enchantment. Gonna have good low-level stuff. Boar skin. Something that could be added potentially to our shaman. Nat plot +5 and slash resistance does not stack with I think like the bodies, like iron skin or whatever. So only so helpful there. We have a big heal 40. I mean, this one is heal 30, 15 AoE 1. This is a bigger area. Right? It's still really small range, so it's going to be tough to get our guys in there. The extra area is nice. It's a big heal. I don't know how likely we are to heal. I don't know how likely we are to cast it, to be honest. This is my biggest thing. Desert Winds is a really important spell, I think, that people are going to cast, and we should at least have some plan for. It's just fire arrows, but it's available really early at enchantment 3 and gives 5 precision. So against people who have access to a lot of bows, that is something that could be problematic. Now we do have fire resistance, which is going to help us out there. But this is, I think, a really important spell in any nation that has these cross paths and has any kind of archers. Like Baratos loves this spell. When I was messing around with Phalegra, I think this is a huge spell potentially for them, just because of its low research cost and it's pretty high impact. you know, AoE 25 is quite high. So rain is bad for us because we're afraid. Although with some of the stuff we have, we'll be slightly less afraid. There's a couple of spells in here that are Spell Singer only, which we obviously can't use, but I think they're mostly defensive, so not too big of a deal. Spell Ward if we need more MR, obviously big. This is Spell Singer only. Poison damage, like, I mean, look, yeah, this is AoE, you know, 7+ for 5 poison damage if wounded, in comparison to like the lower level 8 AP fire damage with precision. Obviously that one costs a gem, so it's not the same thing, but if we give our guys a staff, our shaman a staff, they could potentially do this ooze thing. I have no idea if it's any good or not. Here you can give out natural protection and slash resistance to a small group of soldiers, which is nice. I don't think there's a bigger one, but that is kind of cool. Movement is doubled. It's like a floating thing. Quagmire. Group regen. Heat from Hell was saying we're in very good shape to cast. We can definitely fatigue people out with Heat from Hell. Weapons of Sharpness, that's the little one. We obviously eventually want the big one. We can stun with Earthquake Warriors if we want. Let's see. Rigor is really hard to cast. Could consider rigoring. We would like to be able to get to High Death to do Darkness, which would be big for our Seir, because they obviously just see it anyway. But that's fine. I don't think Thaum is super likely to be where we go early. The big, actually, if you're not at war, another big piece of DE is that if you search for a site and there is a higher level site that you didn't find, it will tell you. And so having access to the remote searches is huge. So definitely going to want some Thaum for that. Soul Slay Communions are going to be hard to pull off. I don't know if the computer will cast them. So kind of rough there. Making things confused, I think. Everything gets +2 MR, +2 false regen, and true sight for 1 round. Illusions are destroyed. It's a really cool spell. We can't cast it, but it's really cool. And then Blood, I think, is going to be big for us, especially if we are going for a Seir focused strategy. That means heading right down Blood. Is something that we're going to be pretty interested in doing. That's going to give us our Sabbath, Reinvig, Imps. I don't know how, I've done random testing. I've still not actually seen us ever cast this spell, but theoretically it's there. Consume Strength and Consume Heart are both really nice. Not for super combatanting so much, but for doing like Turbo Sabbaths. They're going to go a long way in getting those buffs on the Sabbath slaves. And then, of course, the Serum we're after is a big one. That's huge. Something like Bloodburst can be good. Again, if you're up against low HP elites, 16 AN damage is just going to kill a square of them a lot of the time. Actually, one of the spells that I do know... Well, okay, so one of the spells that I do know has changed actually is Hellfire, which is now... 6 squares, basically, right? 2 effects of AoE 3 each of 11 AN damage. So that's potentially, again, against like elite troops or elite sacreds that have lower HP, you can just bypass all the defenses with Hellfire. And then Bloodlust is huge. Celestial Abominations is going to grant, again, not Fear, but Dread 5, which is another angle we can attack people from. We can attack them from a morale angle. And later, that's going to pair with Blood Rain. So we can hit people from a morale angle there as well. Unclean Spirits is another big fear effect. So, yeah, I think I think this is a decent sword. I don't know if this is actually what I'm going to end up going with. I might test what that Berserker bit looks like a little bit, but this should be a lot of defenses, a lot of stats, and it should let our shed go insane while giving us a pretty good amount of income still to play the game with and sort of get to use our whole toolkit. But I am going to go ahead and stop here. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next video. Have a great day.